Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, Cam. Good morning. Today we're going to hop into numbers. Not numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but rather numbers when they're applied to nouns. So as we know, there are 4 properties with nouns. There is definiteness, there is gender, there's number, and then there's status. We've covered 3 of those so far, so now we're going to delve into the final one before we start looking at phrases. So, when it comes to nouns, there can be 3 types of numbers applied. Nouns can be in singular form, dual form, or plural form. Right? Singular means 1, dual means 2, plural means 3 or more, which is different from English, where in English, plural means 2 or more. In Arabic, they have something known as dual, which just means 2, right? So a noun that represents 2 things. So to identify something in its singular form, the word just looks normal. There's nothing added to it on the end, nor is there any change that occurs in the middle of the word. So when it comes to numbers and nouns, to identify whether or not we're dealing with a noun that's in singular, plural, or dual, we want to look at the endings, and we want to look for what's going on in the middle of the word, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. So dual, in order to put a word into a state of dual, we add on ani or aini, making that noun now 2. So if I said muslimani, that means 2 Muslims, right? 2 Muslims. And the ani represents the rafa' state, which in singular was represented by a dhamma that we see up here. Whoa, my computer's freaking out. Which was represented by a dhamma. It's now represented as an ani in the dual state, right? And nasb and jar, which were before represented by kasras and fathas, are now represented by an aini. Aini, that aini sound, right? The ya and the noon, that aini. That now represents nasb and jar. And it can get a little bit confusing because they're the exact same thing that they're being represented by, but once you know the context, it's easy to figure it out. And this applies to masculine nouns. So when it comes to female nouns and we want to make them represent 2 things, it becomes muslima tani. Tani. The only difference between the male and the female is the ta in the beginning. It goes from ani to tani. And then for nasb and jar, it's taini. Kabira taini. Right? So when it comes to plurals, there are 2 types. There is sound plural, and then there's broken plural. Right? So for sound plural, it means that the word is left intact and something is just simply added onto the end. For broken plural, it means the structure of the word has changed, and we're going to look at that later on. So when it comes to making a male word plural, meaning that it's now representing 3 or more, for rafa, you add on a una, so it becomes muslimuna, and that means 3 or more Muslims, right? Or we would just say Muslims. For nasb and jar, it becomes ina, muslimina, right? For a female noun, the rafa' becomes atun, and the nasb and jar becomes atin. So muslimatun, let me just correct that. Muslimatun would mean 3 or more Muslim women. Muslimatun. And then muslimatin would have the same meaning, but just in jar or nasb. So when it comes to broken plurals, what we have to understand is that they actually exist in English, right? A regular plural in English is where you just attach an S on the end. See, as you can see, its regular form is left the same. You just add an S on. A broken plural is where the word completely changes, right? We go from mouse to mice. We can't even identify the original word. That's a broken plural, and they exist in Arabic. So here we have kitab. So kitabun is a book, kitabani is 2 books, and then kutubun is books, referring to 3 or more. Then we have kawkabun, kawkabani, and then kawakibun, kawakibun. See, it's not kawkabuna or kawkabina, but rather it's kawakibun. Then we have rajulun, rajulani, and then rijalun. See, it's not rajuluna or rajulina, but rather it's rijalun. It's changed in its makeup. So now we're just going to go through the chart here. So for masculine words, when we take them through, for masculine nouns, when we take them through the singular, dual, and plural, this is how they're going to look. So in rafa, it's alimun, alimani, alimuna. Then nasb, it's aliman, alimaini, alimina. And then jar is the same thing, except in singular. Alimin, alimaini, alimina. Right? So then let's do feminine. So feminine in rafa, it's alimatun, alimatani, alimatun. Then nasb, it's alimatan, alimataini, alimatin. Jar, alimatin, alimataini, alimatin. Right? Then for broken plurals, when it comes to the plural on the end, for rafa, nasb, and jar, it's just un, an, in. Right? It's just like a singular word. No real difference there. And one question that you might ask is, well, how do I know if a word is sound or broken? Really, the only way to tell that is either through experience or by using a dictionary and looking up what the plural version is. And that's how we'll be able to tell. Okay. One thing to keep in mind is that the gender of broken plurals are feminine. All of them are feminine except for ones that are inherently masculine. So words such as rajulun, when you get their broken pattern, it's rijalun. See, rijalun. That means men. It can't be treated feminine because it's inherently masculine. So it'll be treated masculine. Alright. But words such as kitab, right, that's feminine when you put that into its broken plural state. Kutub, feminine. And it will be treated like it's feminine. Next up. So referring or pointing to a broken plural. This is a rule that tends to be really confusing for people, so you might want to pay extra attention here. So when it comes to pointing or referring to a broken plural, the word that's referring to it or pointing to it will always be treated as singular feminine. So here we have the word hadihi kutubun. That's translated as those books, even though this is this singular. That doesn't mean those. If it was those, it'd be haulai, but rather it's hadihi. And hadihi is usually used to point to one feminine thing. But in this case, since it's pointing to a broken plural, we use the singular feminine, right? Same with tilka. It's pointing to a broken plural, which means multiple stars that are far away, but it's actually just using the singular feminine to point to it. Same thing when it comes to describing something. So this is actually a new concept here that we're going to tackle right in the next lesson. It's called mawsuf sifa. It's where you have the word that's being described, then the description after. So it's pretty much just a word being described by an adjective, right? And these two things have to match in all four properties, right? But in this case, in this one case, the adjective, since it's pointing to a word that's a broken plural, it will be singular feminine rather than being plural feminine. So this is just a rule to keep in mind. It tricks a lot of people, but it's really easy to iron out when you get a bit of practice in. Okay, alright. Assalamu alaikum.